Okay, here's part 2 of lesson 30. It's our 3-column notes. First thing, always put your heading, your name, number, date, first and last in cursive. Okay. Make sure you're writing the date for when you're getting down these notes, not just when the date I'm writing. My number is pi, and our subject is math. Alright, so this is similar to our last lesson in that it's asking us to come up with 3 equivalent fractions. But in the last lesson, we had a visual model. We had a drawing of fractions and we're able to write on it. Here, we're just going to use our multiplying and dividing to help us out. So, one good thing to first look at for equivalent fractions is to simplify or find our lowest terms. And what you want to look at is there any number both of these can be divided by? Well, they're both even, and when they're both even, I can divide both by 2. And I'm doing them separately, so I need to write them separately. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So I have my first equivalent fraction. Now there's no other numbers I can divide both 2 and 10 by. So now I'm going to go the other direction and I'm going to find an equivalent fraction in larger terms. I'm going to multiply. I'm going to cut these pieces up smaller. So I'm going to multiply both by 2. They always have to be the same numbers here. We're not going to do the shaded different sizes than the unshaded. 2 times 2 is 4. 10 times 2 is 20. So there's another equivalent fraction. Okay, and then I need 3. So I'm going to need to use multiplying again. So I'm going to multiply by 3. Why not? Keep the numbers smaller, easier to multiply. 2 times 3 is 6. 10 times 3 is 30. But I could have multiplied each by 100, and that would have given me an equivalent fraction. It's just now the pieces are much, much smaller. But it's still equivalent, still the same amount shaded in. So our equivalent fractions to 2/10, we have 1/5, we have 4/20, and we have 6/30. These are all equivalent. They are all equal to each other. The same amount is shaded in for each one. It's just the size of the pieces have changed. All right, same thing with 4/24. Are both of these numbers even? Yes, so that means I can actually divide both by 2. So 4 divided into groups of 2 is 2. 24 divided in half is 12. 2/12. I also notice, though, these are still both even. So I can actually divide both of these numbers by 4. And it always has to be a number I can divide both by. I can divide this one by 3, but I cannot divide this one by 3. So that's not a common factor. I got to make sure it's a common one. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 24 divided by 4 is 6. Now there's not any other numbers I can divide both by, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply to get an equivalent fraction. And multiplying by 2 is pretty easy, so I'm going to stick with that right now. 4 times 2 is 8. If I double 24, that's what I'm doing when I multiply by 2. I double. I get 48. So all these fractions are equal to 24. They are equivalent. So 4/12 is equivalent to, 4/24 is equivalent to 2/12, which is equivalent to 1/6, which is equivalent to 8/48. So next we're going to find equivalent fractions for 25 hundredths. Well, they're not both even, so I can't divide both by 2. But this ends in a 5, and this ends in a 0. And a number that is a factor when it ends in a 5 or a 0 is 5. I can divide both by 5. 25 divided into groups of 5 is 5. 100 divided into groups of 5, well, if I think of money, those are nickels. And it takes 20 nickels to make 100 cents, or $1. Also, I move that placeholder, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I get 20. But also thinking of money, 25 makes me think of quarters. And I know 100 can be divided into quarters. 25 divided by 25 is 1. I can get one group of 25 out of 25. And if I think of quarters, how many quarters are in a dollar or 100 cents? There are 4. 1/4. 25%. 5/20ths, they're all that 1/4 or 1/4. Now I can't divide by anything else, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply. So doubling 25, I get 50. If I double 100, I get 200. So that is another equivalent fraction. So 25 hundredths is equivalent to 5/20ths, which is equivalent to 1/4, which is equivalent to 52 hundredths. Last one I'm going to look at for equivalent fractions here. 20 and 36. Well, both are even, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both by 2. Half of 20 is 10. You may not know half of 36, but this could be on your on your multiplication chart for you to check. I can't do half of 30, but I can do half of 20, which is 10, and then half of 16, which is 8. So 10/18ths. Both of these are even, and that lets me know I can actually divide both of these by 4. Since both of these are even, I can divide by 2 again. 20 divided by 4 is 5. 36 divided by 4 is 9. It's another equivalent fraction. And I wouldn't have wanted to draw a 2036 to figure this out, but I could if need be. Now there's no more I can divide by, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply. So I'm going to get even larger numbers, more pieces in there. But I'm going to multiply by 2 because it's easier, and it gets me an equivalent fraction. 2 times 20 is 40. 2 times 36. You may not know that, so maybe you want to take some room over here. 2 groups of 6 is 12. 2 groups of 30 is 60. Add those together and we get 72. Okay, so my equivalent fraction to 20/36 are 10/18, 5/9, and 40/72. So now we're using our dividing, always common factors, or multiplying, always the same number, to generate our equivalent fractions. Okay, now it's time for you to practice finding more equivalent fractions. Thank you for joining me.